What's up, guys? Welcome back to TheReviewSpace, and today on Versus, we take a look at a couple of classic Spider-Man last-gen video games. We take a look at Spider-Man 2 for the PS2 and Ultimate Spider-Man for the Nintendo Gamecube. Alright, let's check it out. Alright, so these are the two games side by side, and let's take a look at Spider-Man 2 first for the PS2. This one came out earlier. Alright, so this is the box art for Spider-Man 2, and of course it's very reflective of the actual film itself. You got the costume that's worn by Tobey Maguire. You have Dr. Octopus, a very small reflection of Doc Ock, Spider-Man's eye. Alright, at the back you have this, Dr. Octopus again. Take New York for a spin. Do anything Spider-Man can with breathtaking new moves and amazing combos. Battle Doc Ock, bust street crimes, or clash with classic villains. Now the thing with this game is that it's a sequel to the Spider-Man first video game of the first movie. And as you can see with these screenshots, they really promote the idea that you can in fact go anywhere you want. It's more open world than the first game. This game is from 2004, that's right, it came out in mid-04. Just a couple of years after the first Spider-Man game that is based in the first movie. I don't have the manual for this game, unfortunately, but there's the disc, obviously. It's a nice little print, and you can see the image of Doc Ock with his appendages. It even says official movie merchandise over there, as if, oh, it's somehow, if it doesn't have that tag, we're not gonna think it's an official movie label product. Yeah, man, this game's put out by Activision. I believe it's developed by Treyarch, who also developed the first Spider-Man movie game. I wonder what happened to Treyarch these days, man. I wouldn't know. I guess you'll have to ask a fanboy. Alright, so let's take a look at Ultimate Spider-Man's box art and packaging. You got Nintendo GameCube logo at the top, and it's very cartoonish look. Of course, it's got the Ultimate Spider-Man artwork design. Looks pretty cool. You got Venom, rather, behind Spider-Man, kind of faded, ready to jump out and grab him. Ugh. Taking a look behind at the artwork. Be legendary, be predatory, be both. It uses a memory card! 50 blocks for the GameCube. Yeah, that's right, this game's only a single player. Both games are single player only. Swing to the rescue as Spider-Man and blaze a path of destruction as Venom. Play both sides in the most groundbreaking Spider-Man experience ever. Unleash your fury as the villainous Venom. Encounter more Spider-Man characters than ever before. The original story and character illustrations are by comic book writers Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley. I remember reading a few of these comics, The Ultimate Spidey. They were alright. I actually liked some of the character designs. It was a fresh new take on Spider-Man. And this game came out in 2005, like mid-late 05, so just a little over a year after the Spider-Man 2 came out. And the game is also developed by Treyarch. You can even look on the top right, it says EB Canada. It was $59.99, $60, and you bought this from EB back in the day. Oh man, it says right there, 10/4/2005. Alright, let's open it up. Here we go. Nice. Everything looks about right. You got the manuals. So let's take a look at the manual. Alright, so this is the instructions, and everything is in black and white though. So everything's, basic here. You got the controls and tells you how to save the game and all that, unlockables. Alright, and then behind it you got a promo for X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse. Interesting. I don't think I've ever played any of these X-Men Legends games. Alright, and this is the disc itself, the small GameCube disc. Very simple Ultimate Spidey, and then you have the red backdrop color. It's alright, it's very tiny a disc though, so they can't include too many details. It looks cool. Alright, now as far as the cover itself, and just the design from a packaging point of view, the one that I like the most, I like this, it's simplistic, it represents the movie. This one also represents the Ultimate Spidey comics. I think just because this one looks so much more cartoonish, I love that comic book flair to it. I'll give it to Ultimate Spider-Man in terms of packaging and design. Alright, now we got all that out of the way, let's take a look at both of these games and compare them side by side. Let's do it. Alright, let's begin with Spider-Man 2. Now let's talk about the controls and the gameplay. It's a beat-em-up style combat engine that uses various punches and kick combos to defeat the enemies. You gotta tap R1 for this slow motion spider sense mode, and this basically allows you to dodge the enemy attacks even better. There's a targeting system, but it's kinda awkward, and it basically results in a sloppy combat system, but it does get the job done. You can run faster if you hold R2 and then you tap punch to uppercut the enemies. It's kinda essential against some of these harder enemies. There's various missions, from chasing car thieves, beating up bank robbers, saving people from sinking ships, and dangling buildings, and these are usually initiated by a yelling pedestrian. After completing missions, you earn points which you spend on purchasing new moves from the various shops around New York. It's kind of strange that Spidey has to shop in a store for new techniques. Jumping uses charging up for higher leaps, with an easy or normal mode for web slinging. Wall crawling is very simple by leaping next to a wall and then just tapping circle. You can charge up for higher jumps and even sprint wall crawl with R2. So essentially wall crawling is incredibly accessible. Black Cat makes a very sexy appearance and acts like a pseudo-partner, sidekick figure, and basically she's quickly jumping from building to building and you're forced to keep up with her, and then this usually leads you to some kind of villain-infested area or a boss fight. The main villains include Rhino, Shocker, Mysterio, and of course Doc Ock, who is featured in the Spider-Man 2 movie. These boss fights are very pattern heavy and they feel randomly interwoven into the storyline. Rhino's appearance was relatively underwhelming even though he had a pretty cool looking suit. Shocker was a bit better and it was very reminiscent of the Shocker from the 90s animated series. And Mysterio got some really good segments. But at the end of the day, the most fun part about Spider-Man 2 is the open world exploration and the web slinging that expanded so much from the first Spider-Man game. Alright, let's talk about Spider-Man 2's graphics. Spider-Man 2 has a great realistic look with detailed buildings and environments that remain consistent throughout the game. There is a real-time clock system of sorts that switches from day to nighttime and so on. So like one time it'll be daytime for like 10 minutes or so and then it would switch to nighttime. Story is presented through this film-like CG cutscenes, and then you have these character models that look just like the actors. There's various areas like Central Park and Times Square that look alright, but at this day and age they do feel dated. Like for example in Central Park, every tree appears the same exact model with the thinning leaves and it looks like they've been copy and pasted. And Times Square is filled with all kinds of Activision, Treyarch banners and all kinds of advertisements. Times Square does look better at night though in Spider-Man 2. Overall, the visual look of Spider-Man 2 is an incredible leap up from Spider-Man 1. Okay, let's talk about Spider-Man 2's sound. The game is narrated by Tobey Maguire, the guy who played the Spider-Man character in the movies, and it does feature some voice actors. You got Kirsten Dunst and Alfred Molina playing, reprising the roles. But in all honesty, they're not really that outstanding or memorable, especially Tobey Maguire. He has a really weak delivery, and I wish he just had some more bass in his voice. I wish you could just make out what he's saying. It seems like he's just mumbling everything throughout the game. Black Cat looks very sexy, but her voice is very ditzy. It just doesn't seem to fit her character. Spider-Man 2 includes this really funny voiceover tutorial, you know, the guy who tells you what you gotta do. At the very beginning, he's there. It's kind of like Spider-Man 1, actually. The music soundtrack is very epic and orchestral, and it's very film-esque. You know, it's like definitely a score that you would put in a film. But it does kind of disappear and it's kind of inconsistent throughout the game. So you'll hear it, and on other moments, it's not going to be, there's going to be no music whatsoever. There's also a lot of distinct shout-outs and calls for help from the pedestrians, so they'll be yelling out stuff from Spider-Man as he swings through the city of New York. Alright, so now let's talk about Ultimate Spider-Man for the Gamecube. The gameplay and controls of Ultimate Spider-Man, it plays very similarly to Spider-Man 2 with some changes and improvements here and there. So for example, you got the swinging mechanics. It still uses the right shoulder button for web slinging, but now you can climb higher on the same web by pressing the Y button, and this eliminates the need to web upwards during the mid-jump in Spider-Man 2. The combat engine is nearly identical, but now there's an emphasis on webbing up defeated enemies using the left shoulder button. So after you beat them, they fall on the ground and then you can just web them up. You can also web them upside down hanging from the lampposts, which is a lot closer to the Spider-Man that we see on the comics and the cartoons. The slow motion feature from Spider-Man 2 is no longer available, so you don't have that Matrix slow motion thing going on anymore. The wall crawling also takes a downgrade. It takes a step back, because if you jump during a wall crawl, you awkwardly kind of fall away from the wall, and then you sort of have to reposition the camera to face the wall again. And you can't really climb higher or faster. You can't even jump during wall crawling. So that's definitely a huge step down from Spider-Man 2. Jumping is also kind of tweaked. Instead of charging up and releasing the jump button, you just press the A button and then hold it to jump higher and further. You don't buy movesets and upgrades anymore, and you can collect unlockable items such as comic book covers that's scattered throughout the city. These album covers or comic book covers look really cool, but you're only going to be staring at these things for like a minute or two. The same basic missions are carried over from Spider-Man 2, such as beating up bad guys, retrieving stolen items from thieves, rescuing dangling citizens from buildings. I've noticed that they don't really have these rescue missions anymore from the ships, the sinking ships. You're bringing up injured people to hospitals, just like in the first one. And then there's these beat the clock racing segments. There's no more middleman between missions, and you just immediately launch into these activities by being within their vicinity. This is a smoother experience compared to Spider-Man 2's mission-loading pedestrians. You don't have to talk to anybody who's yelling out or calling for help. There's these special race segments. You're racing against this person, Human Torch, aka Johnny Storm, and he kind of fills the Black Cat role from Spider-Man 2 minus the sidekick missions, and these racing segments seems to be a bit more challenging than the average beat the clock. As featured in the game, you get to play as Eddie Brock Jr., aka Venom. His gameplay feels more grounded as he cannot web sling at all, instead using his enormous leaping ability to jump across the city. He attacks using the suit, stretching forward like elastic to damage the enemies. Pressing the left shoulder button next to a civilian or enemy absorbs them, replenishing Venom's health. His levels are generally played during the nighttime in contrast to Spider-Man's daytime stages, but they do vary over the course of the game. Venom will also confront Spidey periodically, resulting in some sort of interference by S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Nick Fury or Silver Sable, who are somewhat interwoven into the storyline. The Venom stages feel more chaotic, reminiscent of something like Incredible Hulk or Hulk Ultimate Destruction, as he can throw cars and vehicles because he's really strong, while simultaneously being chased by helicopters firing at you, military vehicles, and armed soldiers that are just shooting at you. The boss fights feature villains and heroes from the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, such as Rhino, Wolverine, and of course Venom himself. These battles are fairly challenging and feel better executed compared to their Spider-Man 2 counterparts. I mean, the fight against Rhino alone is just more detailed, there's more things you can do, and it feels like a longer, more extended fight compared to the Rhino battle in Spider-Man 2. I mean, that one is just a walk in the park, and it just seemed almost like a last-minute kind of thing. It didn't even feel important. Okay, let's talk about Ultimate Spider-Man's graphics. Visually, Ultimate Spider-Man draws directly from the comic books using this panel-style cinematics for storytelling. The character models have a cel-shaded look that's similar to games like Beautiful Joe, and the city locations feel more detailed compared to Spider-Man 2, such as the Central Park. And Central Park's level of attention, it's got these thicker trees and a greenier look. There's even a children's playground in the park, complete with jungle gym and seesaws. Times Square also seems more colorful and vibrant, and features a cool boss fight against Electro during the nighttime. Even the Queensboro Bridge, it looks sturdier, grimier, and New Yorkier. You know, I mean, check out those thicker bars and metal bolts. Damn! But despite all these detailed environments, Ultimate Spidey is marred by texture pop-ins and graphical glitches, such as this. Now take a look at this. I mean, look at the side of that wall. That's about ready to explode right there. This shadow effect is just going haywire. There's so much flickering going on. And I really can't understand why this game has so many bugs when it's developed by the same company, Treyarch. You know, I'm assuming that maybe it's because they only had 1 year to crank this out. Thank you, Activision. But the game's otherwise solid graphics are broken up by constant buildings popping in suddenly from thin air as you're web-slinging across the city. Needless to say, these ugly texture pop-ins kind of ruin the graphics to an extent, but at least it doesn't affect the gameplay too much. Alright, let's talk about Ultimate Spider-Man's sound. The game has some cool beats and loops, and provide these energetic backdrops to the game. It's got this techno-electronica sound. While the music is kind of catchy, the voiceovers aren't very memorable. Even the pedestrians that shout slogans and quotes at Spider-Man sound a lot less audible compared to Spider-Man 2. Peter Parker himself sounds like a total whiny bitch, especially after getting hit in the fight against Venom. I swear, he yells out this nerdy, pathetic "yeah" scream that just forces me to hit the mute button during this entire boss fight. I can't stand listening to this. Overall, the voiceovers don't hold a candle to the 90s animated cartoon show, and they resemble more like the Spectacular Spider-Man series, although the Ultimate Spider-Man video game sounds a lot more annoying. Alright, so who wins this versus? This is a really close one, actually. I think I gotta commend Treyarch for getting the job done with Ultimate Spidey for the most part. There's a lot of glitches graphically, but it doesn't really affect the gameplay too much. And everything else is very similar to Spider-Man 2, which is in fact a groundbreaking game. It really is a very innovative sequel to the first Spider-Man movie-based game. I do appreciate the appearance of Venom and the fact that you get to play as him, although I think his stages they're okay. They're not as good as Spider-Man, especially he can't really web sling. The boss fights are pretty cool. They're definitely a little bit better than Spider-Man 2. There's just more things you can do with the bosses. It feels more extended. I also like the art design of Ultimate Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man 2 looks amazing. And as far as graphics, you know, Spider-Man 2 has no graphical glitches as far as I can remember. You know, it feels so seamless and flawless. The game looks great to this day. The amazing details on the buildings and the environments, and there's no pop-ins and, you know, texture pop-ins or anything. So it's actually a lot closer than you think. But if I had to choose between these two, wow. You can't go wrong with either one. I'll have to give the slight edge to Spider-Man 2. It's just a better looking game, and it plays really, really well too. So Spider-Man 2 is the winner. Alright! Alright guys, so that's it for this episode of Versus on the Review Space. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure you check out both of these games. They're classic Spidey games, and they're probably the best that's been available for the franchise these past how many years now. Alright, thank y'all for watching, and until next time. Ciao.